A Boy Grows in Brooklyn by Ernest A. Naples. Chapter 31. Struggle for Survival, Papa Dies, and Divorce. Narrated by Bruce Naples. Struggle for Survival. While I was still in my teens, and we still lived on Lincoln Place in Brooklyn, my brother-in-law Ted Meller had just graduated from a special school that trained World War I veterans to learn a trade. Ted took up electrical wiring, which offered a good future since most houses in the early 1920s were illuminated by gas. Mr. Van Ness, our landlord, hired Ted to wire our house. Then Ted took me on as an apprentice. The job took a week, as there were 2 floors and a grocery store below. We had to rip up floorboards and snake the BX wire through the crossbeams. Then, when the house was all wired and connected to the meter, the gas had to be turned off and the pipes capped. I learned a lot about electrical wiring that week, but it was not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Ted went on his way, and before long he had a successful operation going. By 1924, Ted and Rose had saved some money and persuaded Papa to sell his shoe repair shop and buy a house with them in Richmond Hill, Queens. Papa and Mama talked it over, and the deed was done. Mama was happy because she would have a nice garden, something she sorely missed in Brooklyn. At the time, Rose was a top seamstress and clothing designer. Custom-made draperies were one of her specialties. Since Mama was an expert with the sewing machine and the needle, Rose set up a workshop in our home and brought some of her work there for Mama to finish. It was a wonderful arrangement, and Mama not only enjoyed it, but was able to make a contribution toward household expenses. Papa made his contribution, commuting to Brooklyn each day to toil at his job with Goodwill Industries. He asked for little out of life, and only occasionally he would stay in Brooklyn after work and visit with his friends and relatives who lived in the Bushwick section. He belonged to a social club there called Fiori di Menfi, which translates to Flower of Menfi. The town of Menfi, Sicily, was where Papa and Mama were born. All of the members of the social club were natives of that town. Since Papa was always too busy raising and supporting his family of 6 to make new friends, it was only natural that he would feel more comfortable among the people he grew up with. When I was in my teens, Papa asked me if I would like to go with him to the club. I always felt that it was a special privilege when Papa asked me to go somewhere with him. When we arrived there, I was surprised at the warm greeting he got. Papa's name was Giacomo, and the people at the club addressed him as Don Giaco. That was the title of respect that they used to indicate the high esteem in which they held him. Indeed, Papa was the senior officer of the club that boasted members who were doctors, lawyers, teachers, judges, and members of grand opera companies. After my visit to the club, I saw Papa with different eyes. He was no longer a hard-working cobbler toiling away at his last. I had always had a great deal of respect for my father, and now the level rose dramatically. Let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure, nor grandeur hear with disdainful smile the short and simple annals of the poor. Thomas Gray. I was always uneasy about my decision to leave my job as an apprentice printer with a good opportunity to learn a trade and perhaps give me job security for a lifetime. There were always demands for a good journeyman compositor in the printing trade. I lost my chance when I opted to go to work for the telephone company. It didn't take long for me to realize my mistake, but then it was too late to turn back the clock. To make matters worse, the Great Economic Depression called all of the shots and decreed that all salaries and promotions be frozen indefinitely. That period lasted from 1929 to 1934. Yep, 5 years. As my basic salary was $24 for a 48-hour work week, except when the company decided to give me days off without pay. It was difficult to keep the old homestead going. With my sister Rose and her husband Ted living with us and paying their share for the house expenses, we just managed to hold on to it. But they were having marital problems, so they decided to move back to Brooklyn. For Mama, Papa, and me, that was an extremely trying period. Other members of the family helped when they could, but everyone was having difficulty in those days, and we just hung in there as best we could. When 1934 arrived, Papa had to quit his job in Brooklyn. He was 73 years old and well past the time when most men retired. He no longer traveled to see his family and friends, and no one came to Richmond Hill to see him. True, our family and his never got along due to an arrogance on their part that seemed to indicate that they thought we weren't good enough for them. Papa dies. On March 15, 1934, the Ides of March, Papa didn't feel well and went up to his room to take a nap. He died that day at the age of 73. After Rose and her husband Ted moved to Brooklyn, they had a child, a lovely girl named Dorothy. Rose and Ted still had their marital problems, differences they could not resolve. With a court decree giving Dorothy to Rose to raise, and both mother and child moved in with us in Richmond Hill. This move on their part was a boon to Mama, who, having just lost her husband, needed someone to care for. Since Rose had to go back to work, and I was away all day doing the same, Dorothy played a key role in keeping Mama from getting lonely.